تزوج بها. So this lady, she came and she heard about Uqba marrying that girl. She came and she said, by the way, I nursed them both. What does that mean? When she said, I nursed them both, what does that mean, Jama'ah? They're now foster siblings, milk siblings. And if they're milk siblings, are they allowed to get married to each other? The relationship becomes haram. So in this case, what do? They say, no, she's just one lady, who cares? And she's an older lady. Are you okay? Do you even know what my name is? Are you going to start arguing with her? If you know that she's a trustworthy woman in the community and she's not, she's still, mashallah, very well-known, respected, and the faculty of mine are still there. So in this case, do you believe her? Or do you ask for an extra witness? So here's what happened. So when Uqba heard about that, he kind of freaked out. He freaked out, like, oh my God, what did we do? So he just immediately went to the Prophet ﷺ. فَقَالَ لَهَا عُقْبَةً مَا أَعْلَمُ. Before that, Uqba, he said, مَا أَعْلَمُ أَنَّكِ أَرْضَعْتِنِي وَلَا أَخْبَرْتِني. He said, you know what? I've never heard that you nursed me. I've never known that. Like, this is the first time I hear that you're my mother, milk mother. And I was never told that I was being nursed by you. ثم فركب إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بالمدينة. He didn't just, just say that or took that her word for it. He just went straight to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم فسأله. So he asked the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, Ya Rasulullah, I got married. All of a sudden, out of the blue, a lady comes to me and she says, hey, I nursed you both. Like as if she's telling him, your marriage is not permissible for you. You did the wrong decision, or basically at least your marriage is invalid. That's what she's saying to him. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. When Uqba, he asked him about his situation, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم says, قال كيف وقد قيل. كيف وقد قيل. There's no literal translation for it really, other than just saying in the way that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said to him, how can you continue with this, being a husband and wife, after what you have been told? The expression كيف وقد قيل, look how short it is. Like, how is it after it has been told to you, or after what you've heard? It became an Arabic proverb. Nowadays, when people, they cast a doubt on something or somebody, and someone tried to challenge, they would say, hey, كيف وقد قيل. Like, what are you going to do when you've already been told what the evidences are? So فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم to him, كيف وقد قيل, and what are you going to do about it since you've already heard from her? ففارقها عقبة ونكحت زوجا غيرها. So Uqba, he had to separate from her, and she later on married somebody else, and he married someone else as well. Now, what do we learn from this, Jama'ah? What we learn from this is that even though this lady, she casted a doubt on his marriage, he didn't just dismiss her claim and moved on. No, he went to inquire to make sure, that what he's doing is right. He wanted to make sure that his relationship is halal. Specifically, the Prophet ﷺ always reminds us the most two important thing that you should really be certain about and never, leave it for doubts. Anything has to do with dima, which means blood, if there is any kind of crime, offenses, or anything like that, and also in the case of al-a'rad, in this case, the case of honors, which is basically marriage, divorce, al-khulu, and so on, and all these kind of things. So therefore, these are two important things, and if you have any doubt in any way, you need to 100% verify the validity and the permissibility of this matter for you or otherwise. And the other thing we learn from this hadith, which is something people, they keep bringing as an issue in Islam in regards to the testimony of men versus women. The common understanding from Ayatul Dain is that if you don't have two men, you bring one man and two women. For each man, you have to bring two women. So people, they think that this is actually standard in the testimony, in the witness cases, in all aspects of testimony. But that is not true. There are certain areas that a testimony of women are, for example, they're different than the testimony of man. And also there are certain areas where the testimony of man will be different than the testimony of women. Which means, in an area like this, the testimony of one woman is more actually credible than a testimony probably of 10 men. Why? Because that's her business. She does that. She knows that she does it, and she's a trustworthy person. So the Prophet ﷺ, he did not even ask him to go and verify anything. Like, it's basically when she said that, like, you know her, right? She's trustworthy. And since she's trustworthy, كيف وقد قيل. What are you going to do after she told you what she said? Therefore, فارقها, just leave, and then they separate from them. So the testimony of a woman in this situation actually more credible. The other thing that we see over here from the Prophet sallallahu wasallam alayhi is that this relationship that Uqba with his sister, would you consider this to be, a'udhu billah, a form of incest? We can't call it that way. Why? Because it happened under doubtful circumstances. The ulama, they call it shubhatu nikah, like it's a doubtful marriage, which wasn't known to them to be wrong. So therefore, if this is the case, how do you separate between a husband and wife when the matter is doubtful? You don't separate with divorce. Instead, you separate with something called fasakh, which means annulment. So the marriage is annulled completely. And with annulment of marriage, there are rules different than the rules of divorce. Divorce has iddah and has, responsibilities towards the divorcee and all the stuff and so on. But there was the fasakh, the annulment of marriage, it's completely cancelled like it never happened. And in this case, the iddah will be only one cycle just to make sure that there's no pregnancy and so on. What if there were children from this marriage? What do you do with them? They say, a'udhu billah, they're haram. Are they going to say about these kids? No, these kids are legitimate and halal because they happen under the shubhatu nikah, a doubtful contract. So under the circumstances that these children were born, were halal, children. But now obviously there is special treatment in terms of interaction with them based on the new now founding evidences to the blood ties of these kids to this family or that family and so on. These things are beyond the scope of this discussion over here. I just want you to know that specifically in matters related to a'rad, such as marriages, divorce, relations between man and woman and so on, these are extremely, extremely, extremely important and sensitive and requires a lot of, sensitivity to deal with them, just like in the case of blood. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you, protect your family. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Any question, Jama'ah? Yes.
Sheikh, so in terms of marriage, if you're trying to find out the character of somebody, and someone just makes a statement about this person,
Okay.
how deep do you go trying to verify that?
A good question. Let's say I would like, someone comes, for example, to propose for my daughter. And so I want to investigate and ask people about this guy. Someone tells me something that is kind of like annoying me, something that makes me feel uncomfortable about it. How far should I go investigating that? Now it depends if the source was credible or not. What if this guy was, holding grudge against him? If they're peers, there might be some competition, for example. Or maybe someone was very reckless in what they said. Yeah, we used to smoke weed together back in the days, but I think he's okay now, inshallah. And I was like, what? So this is now, it's just like, what are you going to do? Should you go investigate? So in this case, you have the option of saying, you know what, Jazakallah khair, thank you very much, there is no nasib. Or if you still think that this guy deserves a chance, then you go and you ask more. How far? It's up to you. You let him know. So like I heard that, you don't have to tell him who said that. But say, hey, I heard that, when you were young, you did something. You want to talk about it? And he would say, what do you mean? He says, something like that. He goes, that was 10 years ago. Alhamdulillah, since then I've never, done anything like this. It was just childish, it was ridiculous, it was, So in this case, it's up to you to make that decision, that choice. But you have no right to go and investigate deep into their past if you don't really think that you're gonna, accept them for marriage. If you don't want to accept them, cast a doubt in you or in that marriage, then just go ahead, bi ihsan. Leave him alone. Wallahu a'lam. Nah. Yes. In terms of transactions? Well, that's what the ayah was about. The ayah was speaking about these business transactions, specifically the documentation of debt in this case. So that the testimony of the man, and specifically when they were traveling, when there was no availability for documentation, in this case, the testimony of a man is equivalent to the testimony of two women. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Nah. Yes. أي واحد فيهم؟ نعم. في صحيح، بس احنا ما فصلنا في الاحكام، احكام الرضاع احنا.
انا يعني بدي اسال الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم لماذا لم يسال بهذا الاتجاه؟
نعم.
هل لم يكن فيه
Now, so the question is basically we know that in order for rada' to become a source of prohibition, it has to be done in certain circumstances, like the child needs to be nursed under under 2 years of age. Also, it needs to be nursed at least, according to the majority of the opinions, 5 full meals, not just one, 5 full meals. So based on these circumstances, did the Prophet ﷺ ask if that ruling of this woman was credible? Did she do the 5, for example, nurses? Did she do that when they were still young, under the 2 years of age? And he did not investigate, salawatullah wasalam. What does that exactly mean? Not just because it wasn't mentioned in the hadith, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. That's number one. Number two, probably because it was already known as a common knowledge amongst them, there was no need to mention the details. And the concern was not about if the rada' يعني happened or not. The credibility was about did she nurse them both or not? That's the problem. So for him, she told him, I nursed you. So he knows that means the full term, which means maybe at least 5 full meals, at least 5 full meals. And back in the days, when you say you nurse somebody, it doesn't mean just once. These women, they're professional, they call them wet nurses. They're paid to nurse the child. So if someone says, I nursed you, that means she took care of him for a while. So that's the meaning of it. So probably because it was the common custom amongst the people back then. So he knows it's more than 5, and it's during the first 2 years, obviously. Now for both of them. So when he went to ask the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't go to ask about technicalities, like, did she really nurse me 5 times? Is she sure about it? Why wasn't 2 years, maybe older than 2 years? No, it was just simple. She said that she nursed us. Now what do we do? And the Prophet ﷺ said, كيف وقد قيل? What are you going to do about it when she already told you so? So therefore, just separate. Wallahu a'lam. نعم.
الآن وقد هناك مكائد تحدث بين النساء، إما أن المرأة تكره المرأة
نعم.
أو تكره الرجل، ولذلك تريد أن تمنعه من أن يختار
نعم.
هذه وتخرب عليه.
نعم.
فكيف هل نستعمل هذا الأسلوب؟
So the question is today, do we apply the same rule? Like basically if a lady comes and says, hey, by the way, you and your wife, I nursed you when you were kids. And if you look at her, you're just like, you're my age. How is that possible then? And in this case, it's not credible. So the question is, do we now investigate further and more to make sure that it's actually a credible report? The answer is yes. Back then it was different. Today the rules are different. So therefore you need to investigate and ask, okay, when was that? How many times? How do you know us? And so basically if the report is credible, then there's definitely a great chance that it's true. Wallahu ta'ala. خير إن شاء الله. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.